What's up, everybody? Welcome to Cosmic Divide, episode 6. I think it's 6. TMB thinks it's 7. We'll just go with 6.5 at this point. We've got a lot of interesting things to talk about today from the across the pond, from across the Pacific Ocean, and right here in America, where this podcast is based on the European Ascent channel. TMV, how you doing? Welcome to America.
Thank you for the warm welcome. Wow, I feel so welcome to this strange country. Yes, much to talk about. Constant storylines going on in the VCT, including some clouted teams as well, getting kind of back in the fray. Let's say it looked like it might be a bit of a disaster for some of those teams, but the hopium is now like reaching a higher level, and it's kind of, we're in an interesting phase really, where there's a lot of teams. I think we're kind of talking about this before, that it's just like, where are these teams, who are these teams, because it's like 1 week they'll play well, and then the other week they'll be awful, and then it's kind of a there's a lot of teams, I think, in that just middle mix. And so we're here to just pass it all out and tell you who's really good and who's actually really bad. But let's dive into it. TenZ out, Marved in. What do you think of TenZ out, Marved in?
Well, I was on Twitter yelling this from the internets that this is probably the move that should be made. As soon as I saw them play with Marved, it was just a completely different team. TenZ has obviously kind of had his struggles, like in his personal life, lots of stuff to deal with. It's really hard to tell like what the actual level of TenZ performance is, I feel like, because he's always seems to be dealing with something outside of the game. We saw some moments of brilliance, and like there's still like the talent is there for TenZ. Like his jet is crazy. We even saw some like pretty decent performances on other agents, but it's pretty obvious that this team functions better when they have Marved on the roster. And Zekken seems to be able to fill this duelist entry role at least as well as TenZ. And the fact that Zekken has basically played every agent in the entire game over his pro career, including some like stand-ins for like tier 2 and tier 3 tournaments. But still, if you look at his VLR page, it's literally every agent. He's played every single one of them at least once. And the kid is crazy. He's super good. I'm curious to hear what you have to say about just the dynamic of like which player would you want to kind of like build your team around, and what does the maybe benching of TenZ do for Sentinels as a brand?
I mean, yeah, I think it would have been a tough pill to swallow had Marved come in. They look better. They win a game convincingly, and then had TenZ come back in and they struggled again. That, I think, almost would have been worse for everyone, right? Everyone loses in that situation. Essentially, if that were to pass, I think it kind of makes sense to roll with Marved. I also think it's more of a fit in terms of like where the meta is as well. We're seeing a lot of double controllers, so having Pancada and Marved, like if you want to go down, and play double controller in a lot of maps, well, now you've got basically the best roster to do it. You've got like two of the best smokes players in the world,
potentially the best two in the world. Period. Like legitimately.
I won't stand for the Mako slander. No, Mako.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair.
Mako is one.
That's fair.
I'll give you 2 and 3. But
Okay.
I won't hear any Mako slander. But yeah, I mean, it just makes sense with Sentinels. I think long term, it does bring up some questions, right? Long term, I think we'll see where this goes. But then again, I wouldn't worry about that too much either, because let's assume that, Marved plays out the rest of the year, right, for Sentinels. Wherever that ends, they might go to champs, they might not. Wherever it ends, Sentinels, let's just say, play with Marved. This most teams, I would say, probably every team, apart from teams that do well at champs, will probably make at least one change to their roster.
Even those teams will make changes. Like, that's just how Valorant is.
Yeah, and even then, right? Yeah, if someone offers someone more money, then They'll
Yep.
probably take it. So yeah, most teams are going to make changes anyway. So I think maybe even long term, it's not too much of a problem because who knows what anything will look like at the start of next year, right? So I think it just makes sense. It makes sense for kind of everyone. I kind of thought at the time like for TenZ I was kind of thinking like TenZ. I could see in his world that maybe if he did continue to play in this split and continue to maybe not play like the absolute peak, he might have looked back on this time and in 5 years time and thought, why the hell was I playing?
Yeah.
Like I've got all these problems like elsewhere, and I wasn't playing that well. Like what? Why was my first thought to even play? Um, so I think honestly it could be a good thing for just everyone. I think there are more important things in life than Valorant.
Yep.
And I think that for the Sentinels team right now, it probably helps them as well. And so, yeah, I think it's a good thing. It's a good thing all around, I think. And for Sentinels now, we'll see. I think the brand question is an interesting one, right?
Yeah.
Like, is there a bunch of TenZ fans who turn against Sentinels because they see this as them benching their hero or whatever? We'll see. That would be an interesting twist.
Yeah, I think the just the whole like situation is very like difficult to navigate
Yeah,
as sort of like a general manager, like the who's ever in charge of the team, because on one hand, if you don't make the change, right, and you take out a player who's struggling, who needs a break, you bring in a player, they perform well. If you don't then just leave that player in, and I've seen this happen in like sports teams where and you probably have too, where like a backup quarterback in the NFL comes in and just performs super well, and then
yeah,
the guy comes back from a concussion, like the starting quarterback, and it's like, do you make this switch, especially if we're talking about where this happens in the season? Because if Sentinels had lost their last game, they basically are just done, right? They
mm,
basically are out of the playoffs. They have to essentially win every game after that. But now, with this win, it's really at this teetering point of the season where things can either go up or they can go down from here. So if you don't make the change and then they just continue to lose and struggle, people are going to be mad at you for not putting in the player that was seemingly boosting the performance. But then if you don't put in TenZ, then again, you have all these people who are going to be mad that TenZ is not playing. So there's kind of a lot of pressure now on Marved and Sentinels to actually continue to perform. Otherwise, it's like, well, why did you bench kind of like the face of the organization for like
yeah,
one win? It's a weird place to be.
yeah, absolutely. But I think most people honestly, who aren't just deluded like TenZ obsessed,
Yeah.
fans. I think most people would probably be like, yeah, this just makes sense.
Yep.
It as I said, if TenZ did come back and they struggled, then that's just a really rough situation for everyone because people are gonna be like, well, maybe TenZ is the problem, and it just would have been not a great situation for anyone really. At least by doing this, even if Sentinels, do still struggle and stuff like that, they'll just say, okay, I guess, we need to rethink the whole project probably,
Yeah.
right? Rather than, everyone kind of maybe pinning it on one player or something like that. So yeah, I think it just makes more sense. Okay. There's 3 undefeated teams left in VCT. Do any of them lose before the end of split 1? Your thoughts?
Um, this is an interesting one. I'm gonna take the side of no. I don't think any
Mhm.
of the undefeated teams will lose. The undefeated teams, I guess we
Really?
should list them, are Fnatic, Loud, and DRX.
DRX.
All of them are 5-0, I believe,
Hmm.
at the moment, or maybe Fnatic's 4-0 and gonna be 5-0 after this week, I would assume. Anyway, I don't think any of them are going to lose, and I think the only reason that one of them would lose is if they get to like 6-0 and are fully qualified as like the number one seed going into playoffs. Is it six or? I guess they would have to be nine. I don't know. Is it? They play 9 games.
They play 9 games. I feel
Okay.
like if you get you don't have to get number 1 seed doesn't matter too much. As long as you finish in the top 2, you get like the bye in the playoffs, essentially,
Right.
the like first round bye. So first and second doesn't really matter. I think once these teams get to 7-0, if they get there, they'll probably have top 2 locked up. And
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, maybe their last like couple games won't really matter. I actually do think that, in my opinion, I think Loud could lose a game.
They've
They
definitely
play
been the closest so far, for
yeah.
sure.
They play NRG and Leviathan in their last 2 weeks. So if they are taking
Ooh,
their foot
okay.
off the gas, they're playing two decent teams, who probably will have something to play for. So I could see them, not just not really focusing too much on those games, just kind of maybe just like scrimming like secret stuff, but
Yeah,
then
don't give away the sauce like right before
yeah,
playoffs.
yeah, but then you just play your comps that you've played before, and don't show anything. Yeah, so I could definitely see them losing that game. I feel like DRX probably are the best chance to not lose a game. They play Rex Regum, they should win that. Detonation, they should definitely win that. Team Secret and T1. Like even if DRX, I think, are taking their foot off the gas towards the end, I still think they might just be good enough to just beat all those
Yeah.
teams anyway. And I think particularly like if they, let's say in their last game they've got nothing to play for, but it's against T1. So it's like a Korean, like, are they going to want to lose to another Korean team? I feel like there might be a bit of pride there that, they might give it a bit more effort. And Fnatic,
Right.
like, playing Navi in the last week. So again, like, if Fnatic got nothing to play for against Navi, they could easily lose that game, I think, and that wouldn't be a shock. So
Yeah,
I,
still, I kind of feel like Fnatic are like a pride team, though. I feel like they would be
yeah, I feel like
insult.
they want,
They
yeah,
want to be undefeated. They want to
yeah.
dominate the league.
And they could like I could see it where they want to argue like because obviously they won lock-in, so they haven't lost a game from
Hmm.
its start. Like I could see that they want to go to Masters Tokyo and no one's even beat us, right? We haven't lost a game this year, right? They want to go in. I could see that where it's like, yeah, we're just you can't beat us.
Yeah, they actually
Right,
put
like,
out a YouTube video today that was titled "We haven't lost for 150 days." I think
yeah,
so.
yeah,
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, I guess Loud is probably the most likely to lose. Those are definitely two, three. I guess. Side tangent. What do you think about 100 Thieves? How do you feel about 100 Thieves? Because I was gonna say there's three good teams. We saw some good 100 Thieves. Are they like? Do you think they could challenge Loud? Where do you think 100 Thieves are?
uh, I think 100 Thieves are still a middle of the pack, like America's team. I maybe upper middle of the pack. They have a massive game coming up, 100 Thieves.
Yeah.
This game against NRG is kind of crazy. And they have a pretty tough schedule. I mean, they play NRG, Loud, Fury in the next three.
Hmm.
It's not unreasonable that they might lose all three of those games. This game against NRG to me is a big, like, Laraville Magnifico, where it's like, whoever wins this game, I'll have at least a fairly decent confidence that they could actually go to Tokyo. They could
Hmm.
be like the third place team, maybe even second, honestly, if all things work out right. They're kind of an odd team though. 100 Thieves. They're kind of like they played Leviathan so close. The crew game. It was like they were sleeping for the first half and then decided to wake up, and then they got destroyed by Cloud9. Okay, they beat EG. Like I don't know. It's kind of one of them where I still feel like I would put Cloud9 above them right now. Even though they beat Leviathan, I would still say on most days Leviathan probably beat 100 Thieves.
Interesting.
Um,
Okay.
and Sentinels, I feel like, are in a similar, especially now with the Marved edition as well. I feel like 100 Thieves are kind of ascending a bit, but I feel like Sentinels are ascending a bit, and it feels like NRG are ascending a bit, and I feel like Cloud9 are actually slightly above all of those teams. It's like
Yeah.
it's like an odd thing where all of those four North American teams are kind of they've all seem to be getting better at the same time, and it feels like maybe one or two of them is going to miss out,
Right.
right? Like especially at
They,
least
they,
one
they
of them
have
it
to.
feels like is
They
going to
have
miss
to
out.
miss
Yeah,
out because there's just not enough spots.
yeah. So that's going to be interesting, I think, and I do worry that. But I don't know which one of those teams it is. I mean, that's an interesting question. If you said one North American team out of the four we just named, obviously EG, let's put in that group as well. So EG are going to miss out of the playoffs. Which one of NRG, Cloud9, 100 Thieves, or Sentinels would you not have in the playoffs?
I would. Oh my god, that's so tough. I would probably say 100 Thieves.
Yeah, me too.
Honestly, it's either
Yeah,
100 Thieves or like maybe even Energy.
I
Like
know.
face.
How crazy is that?
Yeah.
But are we
But
just coughing the Sentinels mob
100%. It's
opium?
100%. Sentinels is definitely the most likely, but but yeah, I mean, realistically, it's probably 100 Thieves or Sentinels. I find it very hard to just fully get off the energy train at this point, despite the role trolling they've been doing, despite the fact that they have looked like a shell of their former selves. Like, there's just there's just one of those things where it's like, when it comes down to crunch time, who do I trust to win these games when the pressure is like, you have to win this game or your season is over? I trust Energy to do that more than any other team in North America.
Okay, there it is. Let's move away from Americas and come back
Salute.
to to EMEA, where one team in particular, speaking of clouted teams, Karmine Corp won a game. They'd already won a game, to be fair, but the journey that this team has been on is a true hero's journey. You start off with a win, things are looking okay, and then slowly but surely, it gets worse and worse and worse, and then the absolute ceiling falls out. But then you come back, a change is made, and the hero's journey, you come back up and you begin to rise. And I feel like we're on I'm hoping this is the beginning of the rise. I hope that this isn't the end and it's just like, this is where it peaks. I hope that this is the beginning of a steady, gradual, continued rise until we reach the peak, and then all of a sudden Karmine Corp are playing in Masters Tokyo. That would be quite the story. But
I have some bad news. They play Foot, Fnatic, and Giants as their final 3 games. If they get one win out of this, I would be fairly proud of them based on their circumstances.
But to me, this is just incredible, though. The change from where they were, and how, to me, this is like just a classic. I mean, Zeta Division, I think we're always a good example of this as well. Like, psychology in sports, esports, and and if you play, enough sports yourself, you'll know this, and you will have experienced it, where sometimes you just feel like we're going to win, and there's just nothing you can do about it. And sometimes you feel like we're gonna throw this away, and there's nothing we can do about it. It's like, I remember playing football as a wee lad, and feeling like in a game we'd be like 3-0 down or something. We'd score a goal, and I'm like, oh, we're gonna win this game. There could only be like 5 minutes left, and I'd be like, no, we're gonna win this game, and then you would win the game. And you just felt it. And you knew that the other team felt it as well. And I've been on the other end as well, where it's like, we're 2-0 up, there's 2 minutes left, but we ain't winning this game. They score it. It's like, we ain't winning this game. Like, I just feel like, and, we've seen it, as I said, with Zeta Division and Reykjavik, like, from their first game when they got destroyed by DRX to how they were playing at the end and, like, beating DRX, it's 2 different teams in the space of like a week. That doesn't like that. It doesn't, like, it's not coaching. It's not like we've like really figured everything out in a week's time. Just the psychological of being like, we can do this. I think is a massive part of it. And I think for Karmine Corp, I think the game against Navi was like, okay, we lost, but we didn't look. We were a regular team. We looked like a normal team, right? It wasn't like we lost 13-11, 13-7 or whatever to the second best team in the league. Fair enough, right?
Yep.
Fair enough. Like, that's not an embarrassing loss or anything like that. And I think that probably just stabilized everything and made them think, okay, well, that was a lot better than it was before. And then I think that they've, got that confidence in them that, yeah, we can actually do this. And to be fair to Zayt as well, he's coming in from the cold. I mean, when the last time he played before this, God knows. And he came in against Koi, and especially on Lotus. Like, I didn't think he did that. Like, he did.
He was kind of popping off a little bit.
Yeah, he hit some nice shots. And I was like, wow. Like, and the thing is, he's like, obviously he's not going to be super hard fragging or whatever. And he did struggle in maybe some of the other maps a bit at times. But it's like, I thought it would be worse, honestly. I thought he would individually be a lot worse, having to IGL and having not played in years. Like, I thought he'd be massive struggling. But yeah, I mean, this team, I said to Sideshow on Plat Chat, like, he couldn't have picked a better team to do a 4-part series about, ranting and raving about how bad they were playing. Like, he hit the absolute jackpot that this team just refuses to be normal.
It's been so full circle too, because now Sideshow is just like the biggest fan of Karmine Corp. And it makes sense. Like, I mean, they
You're invested.
deserved to be trolled at the beginning of the season because they
Yeah.
were doing some dumb stuff. Like their econ, everything they were doing was very poor. And just to hammer this point home, Zeish, the last team that he actually played for was back in 2020. He's been coaching.
2020.
He's been coaching since then. So yeah, 2020 in May was the last game that he actually played physically as a player, at least from what I can see on VLR.
Go watch
So,
some 2020 VODs and you'll be like, oh my god.
which is
Gold games look better
crazy,
than this.
crazy. But yeah, to your point, I mean, the belief is really it's real because I mean, just look at what Scream looks like. He's
Yeah.
the easiest player to look at. Obviously, he's had kind of the biggest transition from being the IGL playing like non-duelist to now playing duelist and basically, brain off, gun out. Uh, I'm sure that he's still making some calls and stuff as well, but he looks confident. Like 2 weeks ago, he was spraying close angles, shaky aim, missing people, whiffing like crazy. And he's out there just one tapping people in the last game. And he looks like the Scream of 2021, where he's just dominant, capable of quite literally solo carrying a map if he wants to.
Yeah.
Which is a scary prospect because, there is some talent on this team. I've actually been relatively impressed with Shin this year, despite all the struggles that they've had. And I think Navera is truly like a very, very talented player. And the fact that he gets more value with the operator on characters like Omen and whoever else he's happens to be playing than most players do on, Jet is very, very impressive to me.
Yeah. I don't know if you watched the Lotus game closely, but I mean, Shin could not die on Lotus. He could not die. He could not die. He was hitting every single shot. He was using the Champion's Phantom, and it was just like, he could not miss. Like every single shot was just a headshot every single time. It was absolutely insane how well he was playing on that first map against Koi. And yeah, it's just such a great story. It's
Yep.
just it. And if they did somehow manage to like make playoffs or whatever, it would be so good. It would just be like the absolute peak of like Valorant storylines. This team that has just been in the absolute gutter.
Yep.
But it was a really nice moment. I think like just watching like anytime there was a timeout or something, or just seeing like the coach reactions on the cameras and just seeing like the Karmine coach like smiling and stuff.
Actually smile for once. Yeah.
Yeah, like I mean, because you can just imagine, and I mean, the things that they must have gone through, like as a team, and just feeling like you must have just felt so useless, just feeling so like
Yeah.
deflated that I assume that especially the coaches were putting in a ton of work to then just get absolutely destroyed on game days. It must have been just so deflating. And so yeah, it was a really nice moment. Quick note on Koi though. Oh my god,
Oh my God. They
what is
look.
going on? Like I mean, I coming in to this to like the first split, I thought Koi were gonna be like the third best team. I
Me
think
too.
I put them in like the third place in my like initial power rankings of like the teams.
Yeah.
I was like, this roster's really good. If Wolfen can just be a bit more consistent, they'll be fine. They got a really good team. I trust the coaching staff. We've seen it with Guild; they've done okay. Call the Mentors an experienced IGL. I don't see how this goes, that wrong. How has it gone this wrong? I really don't understand how a team with very experienced players for the most part. Everyone outside of Wolfen has played at the top level of Valorant for like a while,
Yeah.
and they've got an
I
experienced IGL and coaching staff. What's going on?
I yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to point fingers too much. Obviously, it's very hard to know what's going on the inner workings of a team. But if you have a player like Trex who has the most games of any agent that he's played on Raze, and you're putting Starkso on Raze over Trex, there are definitely some serious issues in the team. Like, just I don't know who's making this call, whether it's the coach, whether it's the player being like, I want to play the Raze. And I don't want to point fingers, but we've also seen this with Starkso with Acend. He was playing one role, they started to have some problems, then he was playing another role, then he was playing another role. It kind of feels a little bit like the Acend team after they won champs, which is just like trying to like switch things around with the players that they have, find the roles that work. None of them are working. Lots of players doing super individual stuff. I mean, I saw a few deaths for some of the players that were literally just like running across like an op line that was clearly an op line with utility out, no smoke, and I was like, what is this? Is this gold? Like, is this a silver game that I'm watching? Because I, yeah, going from where they were week one and being promising to where they are now, they may legitimately be the most disappointing team of
Oh yeah.
VCT so far.
Yeah, I agree. And to me, like they're changing the roles about. I still don't think they've put people on the best roles. I
Yeah.
feel like if I was to like, manage Koi and be like, you have to do what I say, I'd be putting Trex on full-time duelist. I'd say Trex your
100%.
full-time duelist, Shados your full-time initiator, Wolfen your full-time sentinel,
Yep.
and we're going from there.
Yep.
So you're playing like secondary initiator, and Coldamenta you're playing smokes. Like that is how I would run that team to
Yep.
me. Because to me, probably their best two players are Trex and Shados. Put them on the roles where, they're gonna be the first ones in and taking those fights. Like to me, that makes the most sense.
Yep.
And so they've changed the roles about, and like I wasn't initially a massive fan of their initial roles, and then this seems to also have not worked when they changed the roles. Don't know what's going on, but let's move on from that. And you've got here, well, speaking of Karmine Core, assistant coaches in a partner league. We got tier 2 player pickups by C9 and PaperX proves tier 1 isn't far from every other tier currently. That's an interesting little point. And I do think it, as I said, Zaysh doing better than I actually thought, was kind of possible, to be honest. The PaperX one, I feel like you've kind of slipped in there because something was destroying tier 2.
Okay, yeah.
But,
So let me just clarify. I want to go on a little bit of a spiel here because
okay.
I when I wrote this, basically I feel like the community as a whole puts tier 1 players, quote unquote tier 1 players, on this like massive pedestal above everybody else, right? And yes, there are certain players, I would say people like Durka, Aspis,
Yeah, the very, very top.
the very, very top. Those players are definitely a tier above
I agree.
basically everybody else. But I would be very hard pressed to put. I mean, and we're even seeing this with Ye. Like, Ye was the best player of 2022, and he's looked okay in tier 2 Valorant. He was okay yesterday. Obviously, the systems have a lot to do with how players perform. But the fact of the matter is that the difference between a team that's functioning at like the tier 2, the challengers level, and a team that's functioning at the partnership level is essentially nothing. It comes down to how good they have gelled together, how good their coaching staff is, and then basically that is it. I think that a lot of people were pointing to teams like M80. Oh, maybe you should have been in there instead of Evil Geniuses as far as the VCT Americas. I think a lot of people were kind of upset that, certain teams in EMEA were not in instead of Karmine Corp based on their earlier performances. I think, I would put most of the like top 2 teams in each VC VRL,
Yeah.
probably VRL, over Karmine Corp up until maybe this week.
Mhm.
I think they were all probably better teams. And so the gap between the tier 2, quote unquote, and the tier 1 is so small, and yet because of these league systems and because of these like big name players that have gotten into the partner league for the most part, I think a lot of people just put that league like so far beyond. But if you have a player like Zaysh, if you have a coach like Zaysh, let me call him by his actual title. If you have a coach like Zaysh who can step in and help lead his team to victory over another team of quote unquote tier 1 players, you can't really say that there are these big tier gaps, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think you said it. Like, for a lot of these teams, it's just the system, and I think C9 are probably the best example of that,
Mm-hmm.
where their system, their kind of structure of the core 3 and MCE and the coaching staff and whatever, was probably so strong that as long as you were a culture fit for the team, and just a decent player, I think C9, could have picked up probably a lot of different players and probably been fine. Maybe it wouldn't have been as good as it is, but that they could have, their structure and kind of the systems of how it works is kind of so good that they that yeah, I agree. There's basically the top teams have a probably a couple of players, like a Durka or an Aspas or a
Hmm.
Mako, the very top players, like that's what separates those teams from the other teams, is that they have maybe a couple of those players that are just, yeah, they're better, they are just better players
Hmm.
than the others. But I agree, there's like a lot of the tier one like teams, but this, I mean, even when you think about it logically, right, we've got 30 teams now that are defined as tier one. But if you looked at it like last year as like, who did you really think were tier one teams, you probably wouldn't get 30 teams.
No, there's maybe
You're
like
probably
five.
looking at like yeah, at any given point, 5 to 10 teams that you legitimately thought like were tier one teams.
Yeah.
So when you think about it like that and how big the player base is expanded, yeah, it's kind of obvious when you think about it that, yeah, the top tier two teams and the like, middle to bottom tier one teams are playing with similar level of talent players, because that's what they're like last year. That's what they all were considered anyway.
Yep.
So yeah, I think uh yeah, it just makes sense that the gap probably, yeah, isn't that big, and it just comes down to who's kind of got the better structures. I would say outside of the couple teams who are at kind of the top and have kind of proven it, that they do have like difference makers
They
in
are
terms
built
of like,
different.
yes, yeah, in terms of their players.
Yeah.
Speaking of a team that has done this, Cloud9 is kind of good. I agree. Your thoughts?
Yeah. So, I mean, the most interesting thing about the Cloud9 situation to me is like I coached teams that regularly scrimmed against Big Bean, aka Jakey, and also scrimmed against Sonics when Rooney was on the team. Like, I've seen these players play a lot in like a
Mhm.
very sort of, close up intimate environment. I've watched them play and they were fine.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say they were the best players I've ever seen. Like, yes, Jakey would swing out of his brimstone smoke and kill 3 people in an instant sometimes. But also sometimes he would swing out of his brimstone smoke and get annihilated and throw the round. I watched that happen many times in scrims. And yet he looks like potentially the hottest prospect on smokes in North America this year. So what's the deal? I mean, I have to go to the coaching staff, like, first and foremost, and also to this point that we were just kind of talking about with like the tier gap. I think that the amount of talent that exists in Valorant right now below the partnered league is unbelievable, and most of it is just kind of like unpolished players. I think that
Yeah.
you could take almost anybody that plays in like the pro city, like the
Yeah.
America's sort of like pro league, but also has a bunch of like ranked demons in it. Take anybody there who's not on a partner team, put them under a very good coach, and they will become a partnered level player like
Yeah.
fairly rapidly, because the mechanics are there for all of these guys. That the difference between Ye's aim and Jakey's aim is like very small. Maybe Ye's a little bit more consistent. Maybe he has a little bit more experience, so his crosshair placement and stuff is a little bit better. But mechanically, the difference between these players is not very much. So it really does come down to like how you develop these players and how you like fit them into your system and get them on comfort roles. And that is the biggest thing for Cloud9 to me, is that they are all on roles that make sense to them 100% of the time. You have Zeppa on playmaking slash initiator. You got Leaf on this duelist role primarily, but also playing sort of like these initiators when they need him to, which is kind of what he likes to do. You have Zelsis, who's kind of just been like a Swiss Army knife for every team that he's played on, doing that on this team, and he likes to do that. And then you have finally, for the first time since Zeta was traded to T1, you have a player who actually plays like the info agents at a decent to good level in Rooney. And the ability to kind of offload your brain playing a comfort role and just focus on what's happening is like a superpower. You can see when somebody like Artis is playing Killjoy. His the gears are grinding the entire time that he's playing that, and then
Yeah.
you put him on Jet, and he's just like, oh yeah, insta headshot. I'm here. My utility's perfect. Like the difference between those things is massive, and I think that's what kind of Cloud9 has tapped into.
Talking to that point, I remember when Pancata first started playing Killjoy, you could literally see you could literally see the moments in the game where he'd go, "Oh, I forgot to put a turret behind us."
Yep.
Like you could literally like see the moments. Like you would see him like pause, turn around, and then like quickly go and scurry off and put a turret back, and then come running back. Like you can see these things, and
Yep.
you're absolutely right that Valorant is a game where there's so much going on. Like particularly in a pro game, there's a ton of things going on that I think you're right, where agent simplicity, like just having that absolute mastery of something so that you don't have to think about it, right? Like it's just one thing that you just have done so many times that it's not even like a thought. You just do it and you don't have to think about it, right? I think that is a massive advantage in a game where there just is so much that can be thrown at you, right? There's so many different things to think about. Like, oh, they've got this ult, we've got this ult, maybe we should do that, right? You're trying to listen to your IGL, you're trying to focus on your aim, you're trying to, do so much at one point. Like, I do think that, yeah, just putting people on roles and agents that they just know is probably where we're at. Maybe in the future, right? Where if people, obviously people will keep getting better at the game, maybe we'll get to a point where people are just, so familiar with everything in the game that they can kind of, just master it all. They're just like so good at the game. But for now, I think especially like, yeah, just putting people on roles and agents that they know is probably, and we've kind of already seen this, with certain teams in the Americas League. It just kind of, makes it. It just makes sense. Like, you just hit
Yeah.
the just makes sense button and you do better. But for Cloud9 in particular, I mean, I just really enjoy watching Cloud9 because it always feels like they just come up with like they've got certain ideas, certain plans. They're just cool. They're
Yeah,
just
their
cool
strats are
ideas.
good.
No one else does it, and it's like that's cool, right? They don't just play like normal comps in a normal way and just copy everyone else. They might even pick a normal comp on a map or a meta comp, but they do stuff that no one else does. Right,
Hmm.
they push out of mid on Pearl very aggressively and pinch on the B post plant, or they play very aggressively on B Pearl, or they pick that Viper comp on Acend, but they've got Viper Molly lineups for the default turret, and they
Yeah, that's
we're
cool.
pushing this way, and then we're doing different walls, and we've got our own ideas. Like it's really really cool to watch Cloud9, I think, because it just seems like they're at a level in terms of like their confidence and their structure where, I remember you were saying, I can't remember if it's the last time we did this or not, or when it was, but like how being a Valorant coach is like you're constantly just trying to plug holes,
Yeah.
right? You're just trying to like you put your finger over one hole, another one comes out, and then you're trying to put your finger on that. It feels like Cloud9 are at a point now where they've fixed most of the holes. Like
Hmm.
their ship is steady, and so that's allowing them to focus on coming up with cool ideas. Like the team knows what it's doing, and so that's allowing them to kind of work on like little extra bits and little extra stuff that's just giving them a slight edge in these games, and that honestly might be the difference.
Yeah,
But
and
yeah,
that allows them to play with confidence too, and
yeah,
that's like another big thing. I mean, confidence is a superpower in this game for sure.
yeah. And going off from this, how important is a coaching staff versus players? Now, as someone who has coached yourself, tell me how important are you versus the players?
Well, putting me on the spot for sure. I think it's a little bit hard to like just black and white say this. I mean, most things would be very easy to make that statement about, but I think that the importance of a good coaching staff is something that is very obvious when you see the ones that are working well, like Cloud9 for example, like Fnatic. But there's only so much that you can do with players that are not willing to like
Mhm.
learn or not flexible or simply just don't have the ability to be coached. I guess that is a huge thing. Is coachability is a really important thing. Like the relationship between the coach and the player has to be like a two-way street. You have to be able to like give feedback and not have them get offended, which happens all the time. You can be like, hey, I need you to do this because this is not helping the team, and people will get upset by that. They're like, well, I'm doing it because of this and I think this is better. And it's like, well, we're losing, so maybe listen to the coach. But also you also have to, be willing to not just be like an iron fisted dictator and be like, do it my way, because to the point of, comfort roles and kind of offloading that sort of processing power from your brain, I think there are certain players that are just literally fit to do certain things. Like you could, you could have somebody who is, I think Baby Bay might be the best example of this. Okay. When the game started, when Valorant came out, Baby Bay was playing Cypher. He was a Cypher player. Okay. And I remember watching him play Cypher and being like, this guy is not a Sentinel player. I watched him play in Overwatch. He was like the most aggressive player I'd ever seen. And then as soon as they put him on Jet, is like they unlocked him, right? This player is meant to be aggressive, doing aggressive things. He has to be playing Jet, Neon, Raze. These are the only agents that make sense based on his personality and how he interprets the game. And so, as a coach, you have to be able to kind of like recognize these things and then try and lead the players to that, because everybody comes in to Valorant wanting to be like the superstar, right? All these pro players have probably been Jet mains at one point in their career, or at least in ranked. And so it's like you have to be able to find like the other characteristics that they have outside of aim and mechanics and kind of like lead them to those things. And I think that Cloud9 has done a really good job of this. And DRX is another example. It's like they literally have 4 Jet players on their team, and yet they have like one of the best actual teams with every role covered in the entire world. So it's really a balance between the coaching staff and the players, as sort of like milk toast of a take as that is.
Yeah, I've always thought, and I think you can apply this to sports as well. Like we were saying with players, where there's like, there's a handful of like difference maker players in the world. I think once we start getting to the top level, it's kind of the same thing with coaching staffs, where there's maybe a couple difference maker coaching staffs,
Mm-hmm.
and like, and that's it, and most teams will just end up with a group of like decent players and a decent coaching staff, and they'll do okay, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to be like, the very top like elite level, then you're gonna need some difference maker players, and you're gonna need perhaps a difference maker coaching staff as well. And that's just kind of the way I think it is. And I think if you go to a lot of like actual sports and kind of look at that, you would see probably the same thing. If you take a look at like the New England Patriots and their dynasty, right? You had a super difference maker coach in Bill Belichick, and you had Tom Brady. And it's like, yeah, no wonder we're winning all these games.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Like, yeah, no wonder. Whereas, because most other teams they're coming up against have average level players and an average level coach. And it's like, of course, they have to be like average level, right? There has to be an average level
Right.
at all of these different levels. And I think, yeah, that's just kind of the way it is. But let's move on and speak about a player that, well, last year was definitely perhaps the most difference making player. We've seen 2 games thus far. I haven't actually seen the game that happened yesterday. I don't know if you caught it,
I
but I did
watched
watch
a
the
bit of
first
it.
game.
Yeah.
And that, of course, is DSG Yay. Yay or nay. I see what you did there. What, what do we think of Yay and his early performance, which I would call, I mean, it hasn't been, I wouldn't say it's bad, but I wouldn't say it's lived up to maybe, I think some people would have had expectations of, Yay is just going to go there and just stomp everyone because he's way better than everyone. What do you interpret about Yay's early performances?
Yeah. So I mean, I think the first week they played against Oxygen Esports,
Mm-hmm.
and Disguise lost pretty handily on the first map, and then played a fairly close second map. On the first map, Ye was 7-16. He was whiffing like crazy. There was lots of very, very poor moments. I remember knife out Goomba stopping somebody,
Oh yeah,
switching from
yeah, yeah.
switching
Oh no,
from gun to knife, gun to knife, gun to
yeah.
knife, and then
He
yeah.
had jet knives, and he had his
Oh
knife
yeah,
out.
jet knives too. Yeah, it was
But he's
weird.
moving at the same speed.
It was weird. Um, that's just 1 week coming with a new team. There's already some turmoil in the team. Week 2, they play Shopify, which is a team that is relatively solid. I mean, they brought in Vanity, but it's like a core of 4 players that have been playing together for a long time.
Mm.
And it was a 3-game series, kind of back and forth. I wouldn't say any of the games were particularly close, despite it being three maps. And Ye was the only player for Disguise who went positive across the entire series. And he kind of dominated on Acend, which Disguise won, and then he also had pretty good stats on Haven, which they lost, and then he was bottom of the barrel on Split, which they also lost. So it's obvious that he's not just coming in and just taking over the game, but also he hasn't really been on a stable system yet, because he came in week 1, first time with the team, and then this week Steel is now not IGLing for the team, and Exalt comes in, and I guess he is an IGL. I think he was IGLing for the team, but again, it's just a new roster. It's a new team, so it's super hard to get a read on whether Ye is going to have the effect that it was expected, based off of these 2 games. I think the biggest thing is that's clear is, like, yes, his aim is crazy. I saw him hitting some op shots that I was like, oh yeah, that's the A that I remember. Like a little jump peek sliver, nails the shot. He has some crazy moments. So I think he's probably kind of like warming back up into competitive play for sure. But by the end of this split, I mean, it's really hard to tell whether DSG is going to be good. I personally don't like the moves that they made with this roster. I don't think that they have the best players that they could have had on this roster. And so I have a very hard time seeing them be successful. But I also could see us looking at EA by the end and being like, yeah, that guy's better than everybody else in this league.
Yeah, I'm not really too worried. I mean, for Ye personally, I think Disguised as a team, it's gonna be, starting off 0-2. That's a rough start. But for Ye, yeah, I'm just kind of like, as long as, like you say, as long as you see like those little glimmers of, oh yeah, he can still like hit that up shot that not many people can hit. That's all. That's all I think you really need, to be honest. And I think another team would probably think, as long as he's got that still, we can make it work in our system. Like if in the future he comes back to tier 1, like as we already were kind of saying, like the gap between the lower to middle tier 1 teams and tier 2 is already not that big. So when you've got a name like Ye, who is a big name and stuff like that, yeah, I'm not really too worried about Ye personally, because I still have a lot of faith in just Ye as a player. And I remember Ye as a player like saying, "Oh yeah, I play ranked." When I'm not scrimming, I play ranked because I just love the game that much. And it's like, well, that's a good, like, if I'm looking for a pro player to pick up, like, I might want him to live a bit healthier of a whole lifestyle. But in terms of his putting effort into the game, that's good.
Yeah.
And speaking of a healthy lifestyle, what a segue.
Nice. Yeah, you're getting better at this.
I know. Is Durka the sickest player in the game? Not in a good way. I mean, why are you bullying Durka?
I had to throw a little bit of a shot at Fnatic here, and Durka in particular, because we were talking about Koi earlier. Yeah. They were supposed to have played Fnatic last week, right?
Yes.
Or was it for this game they were supposed to have played Fnatic?
No, they were meant to play last week. Now Fnatic are going to play 2 games in a row, back to back.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, the point being that Fnatic they didn't specify who got sick, so I just picked on Durka here because he has been the COVID baby many times over his career in the last couple of years. What's the deal with Fnatic? I mean, why are they always getting sick? And so obviously we both agree Fnatic is the best team in EMEA and probably the best team in the world.
Yeah.
But when's the last time they had a clean tournament where they were able to play the entire tournament without issues? I guess maybe lock-in. Did they have any issues at lock-in? I can't remember if they had to play any from like quarantine rooms. I think they did.
Leo got COVID, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
So there's only one Masters tournament this year. And Fnatic's record of having COVID issues at Masters tournaments is almost 100% at this point.
That
So,
is
is
crazy.
there some chance that Fnatic makes it to Masters Tokyo with the expectations of winning it and qualifying for champs that way, and then they just have a COVID
COVID.
issue, or they have a
I
sickness
mean,
issue
this is
where
the
their
thing, though. I
one their one Masters opportunity is ruined yet again by getting sick?
It's unbelievable, really. That like no other team has had an issue, right? So far in the like the since the league started.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. I because we were talking about this, I went on Flat Chat and we were talking about this.
I guess TenZ did get sick
Oh,
this week.
TenZ, true. And Sideshow was saying they must just test more.
Yeah,
They must just be testing more than these other teams because there's just no way it keeps happening to the same team.
yeah,
There's
yeah.
just no way. Um, and like obviously COVID is still around and whatnot, but it probably is just out there, and a lot of people, at this point, probably do get it and don't even, know a lot of the time or stuff like that. That's going to be quite a common experience. So yeah, I don't know. It's a very odd thing. I mean, I guess there is a chance that it's a pure coincidence. It keeps happening to Fnatic, or they just keep, I don't know, licking door handles or whatnot. Like that is also a possibility. I don't know, but yeah, it's a very odd one. But I wouldn't be surprised if it was. They are just testing more. We saw this
Yeah,
happen with governments. I'm not going to call out any countries in particular, but certain
true.
governments were like, oh well, if we don't test, then our COVID numbers won't be too high. I mean, so if it's happening at a governmental level, I could believe that it's happening at pretty much any other level.
True.
Uh, so with that in mind, I don't know. The segue here is not going to be a clean one.
From
Let's talk
runny
about Team Liquid.
noses to runny
Yeah,
teams.
to
Team
Liquid.
Liquid.
Uh, you can get COVID from Liquid. Team Liquid. Uh, do you believe in Team Liquid yet? This feels like, is this like a shot at me somehow? This happens, by the way, all the time. Where, I mean, particularly for North American fans, I don't know what is going on there for a lot of those fans. They're just more, I guess, their fandom is more passionate maybe, or they feel more offended if anyone says anything bad about their team. But you constantly get like, why are you so high on X team? Why are you so low on the same team?
Mhm.
I've had comments being like, why are you praising this team? They're no good. And in the same like comment section be like, why are you dissing this team? They're like just a complete opposites. And so I don't know if this is have I said something about Team Liquid? I honestly can't remember. I
No,
probably have.
this is not a shot at you. This is
I'm
literally
just going
just
on a rant about being annoyed at people in comments being like, "Oh, TMV
oh,
hates this team." I don't hate any of the teams. I don't care. I watch
s-
enough Valorant that at this point, as long as you just don't giga troll, I'll probably be happy.
speaking of commenters, can I just go on a rant about commenters for a second on YouTube videos? I know this is completely derailing,
No, yeah, go.
but I will have comments like I check my YouTube studio fairly regularly for comments. Just I read everything that people post
I don't.
because I just want feedback on my videos, and a lot of my comments in the last 6 months to a year have been like on old videos that I published 2 years ago where I made some statement about like an agent being bad or good. And they've since patched the agent 7 or 8 times, and somebody will be like, "This take aged like milk." It's like, bro, what are you doing? Going back 2 years and 17 patches to tell me that I had a bad take on something that's completely changed.
Yeah. Yeah, I get them sometimes on the little YouTube notification. It'll come up and someone's commented on a video from ages ago, and it's like, why are you even watching this video? Like, what? How did you even get here? Like,
Exactly.
anyway, let's talk about Team Liquid.
Sorry,
So,
I ruined
Team
your
Liquid.
segue once again.
Oh, Team Liquid. I think it's an interesting one because when this Team Liquid roster was formed, my expectation when I saw that roster on paper, I was like, hot diggity daffodil. there's going to be a top 3 in the EMEA now. It's Fnatic, Navi, and Team Liquid. Wow, we've got a top 3. Let's see. And I had genuine hopes that Team Liquid would actually be better than Fnatic and Navi. Like, I was literally like, that's probably as high as you could be, which now looks stupid, right? Like, now you'd be like, what are you talking about? They're clearly not better than Fnatic. And I personally don't think they're better than Navi yet either. However, then after obviously we saw them at lock-in, everyone thought, this team's trash. This team is absolute garbage. What the hell's going on? And then honestly, at the start of the EMEA League as well, I mean, there was still a lot of moments where I was going, okay, they fixed some of their problems, but this is still a major work in progress. Obviously, putting safe on Duelist, which both of us, I think, in one of these episodes said they should do.
Yep.
And they did do it, and we were right. So, we were right. Put that in the comments section. Yeah, obviously that helped, and I do think they have steadily improved. I mean, they are arguably. I would have said that Giants were the third best team before they played Team Liquid in EMEA. So I guess they beat the third best team. So I guess Team Liquid are the third best team. But I mean, they probably have a pretty good chance, I would say, of making it to Masters Tokyo. And then they'll probably be what Team Liquid has been at pretty much every single tournament where they, they get through the initial group stage and then go out. And it's like, oh, good job, Team Liquid. See you later. Like, they beat the teams that are kind of in that middle pack with them, and then they play a team who's actually, like a top tier team, and then they lose, and then, they kind of go out. That's been like Team Liquid's, like, I feel like MO for a lot of the tournaments they've been at. And that's honestly where I kind of see them now. I wouldn't be shocked if they went to Masters Tokyo, got out of groups, and then just went home and as they played like a DRX in the first round of the playoffs and get destroyed, and then in the lower bracket play someone else who's pretty good and then lose that as well.
Yeah, they're a team that I think they're definitely like starting to show like, okay, this roster is kind of too talented to continually lose to a lot of these teams. But it's definitely, and they do things like a little bit differently. They have some slightly different comps. They're doing things a little bit weirder than some of the other teams, which is cool. It's like a different flavor. But it's pretty obvious that they're still a work in progress. They have a couple of maps where they are atrocious. They are horrible on Haven, and they are horrible on Lotus, but they're really good on like 3 or 4 of the other maps. And so I think they're kind of one of those teams where, because they have 2 or 3 really bad maps, they're going to have to play one of those every week because they can't ban them all. And so they're always going to have one map where they look really bad, but then their other maps are going to be competitive or quite good. And so every week you're getting sort of like this Jekyll and Hyde, really hot, really cold sort of look from them. And it makes it a little confusing to kind of actually rate them. But if they can shore up, one more of their maps, maybe, I think that they're going to be in that very solid, number 3, maybe even number 2, competing with Navi, depending on how Navi continues to develop their whole kind of weird experimental phase as well. I definitely could see this team becoming a very solid competitor for Fnatic. I wouldn't say that they're maybe ever gonna reach the level of Fnatic. I just don't think that. The thing about Fnatic is I legitimately think that they just have like the best roster they could have possibly constructed, period. And and I just don't quite know if Liquid is there as far as the individual players, but they have some very, very good players, and they have some like excellent ideas. And so I think I'm kind of at that point where I'm ready to believe in Team Liquid, because they kind of just keep winning, and they're seemingly continually getting better despite having a few sort of like setbacks here and there along the way.
Yeah. With the EMEA having 4 slots, I mean, I as I said, I think I would be almost surprised if Team Liquid kind of didn't make it at this point. Like, obviously, if Fnatic don't make it, I don't know what's going on. The world is over or something. Navi, I think, still will make it, almost certainly.
Yeah.
And I feel like Team Liquid just beat Giants, who I kind of see up there as well as a good contender for it. Like you've got Vitality, you got Foot, and am I missing anyone? I don't really think I am. No, it's
No,
like,
I mean
but,
I would say the tier gap between those 6 teams in the bottom four is
yeah, like
fairly
are,
sizable.
are Team Liquid in the top? Are they at the top of like that kind of group right now from kind of 3 to 6? Probably.
Yeah.
That I mean they probably should make it to Master Tokyo with 4 slots. I mean, it shouldn't actually be that difficult for them to go really. So yeah, I guess that is a bit of hopium. Once they get there, we'll see. But yeah, the improvement, the improvement is there, which is good.
Hmm.
Um, because for other teams, it's been a bit more up and down. Whereas I feel like Liquid, it's been more of a steady climb.
Yeah, I would agree
They
with
aren't
that.
as inconsistent as a lot of these other teams. That they are on like a kind of steady climb. So if they keep that up, yeah, with the players they've got, they should be good. But this last topic that we're going to talk about, I love this last topic. Most likely teams to miss out on playoffs who are currently in the top 6, and most likely teams to make playoffs who are outside the top 6. Now, do we want to go and do this for each of the leagues? I think that could be a good way of doing it.
Yeah, let's go region
Be-
by region, and we'll just do both. So maybe starting with Pacific, the top 6 teams
sure.
currently are DRX, Gen G, PaperX, T1, Team Secret, and Zeta Division. And the bottom 4 teams are RRQ, GE, Global Esports, Talon Esports, and Detonation Focus Me. So out of the top 6, who could you see dropping down into those bottom 4? And who would potentially rise up? I kind of know who you're gonna pick to rise up from the bottom 4 already.
Really interesting. Maybe you don't.
Maybe I
But
don't.
to me, the one that's most likely to drop, I think, is actually quite easy. I think it's Zeta. As much as I don't want it to happen, uh, I think it is Zeta. I mean, they play Team Secret next. To be honestly, the answer is probably whoever loses that game
Mm-hmm.
has got a bit of a rough ride. But then Zeta play Paper X T1 Gen G.
Ooh.
That's a rough schedule right there. There's no like easy win that you foresee right there. I mean, they could realistically lose all 4 of those games, and then you've only won 3 games, and then you're gone.
Yep.
Right? Like that's a real possibility for Zeta, I think. So I'd probably put them as the most likely to drop out. In terms of teams that could come back up, I mean, RRQ when they played against Team Secret. I
That's
mean,
where I thought you were going.
if they played at that level, it's not even a question. I mean, if they played like that every week, they'll just. I mean, outside of playing maybe DRX and Gen G, they'll just win every game. To be honest, like if they just played like that, but then clearly they showed that that's not going to happen every week, and some weeks they're just going to turn up and just be awful. Which makes this, I think, very difficult because I don't have much faith in Global. Detonation, I'm not even going to mention. Talon. Could Talon, let me see what Talon's schedule is. Hold on.
I looked at
Talon's
it, and
schedule.
legitimately, it might be Talon.
Have Paper Rex, rough. Gen G, very rough. Rex and Detonation. Okay, they could probably win those last 2. But they probably need at least 1 win, if not 2, over Paper Rex and Gen G. So overall, I'm going to say RRQ are more likely than Talon because Talon's schedule is just a little too hard. But then again, Rex play DRX next. That's a loss.
Yeah.
And they play Paper Rex as well. They play Global and Talon, which I guess are winnable, but
So
give them.
are you a full PaperX believer? Do you believe in this weird roster situation that they've
Oh
been doing?
no, Paper Rex are still like they're still making a ton of mistakes, but they just have better they just have better players. Like it honestly it is as simple as that. They
Mm,
have better players than the teams that they play, and those players win more aim. Like sometimes rounds come down to aim duels. Like that's just
yeah.
how it is sometimes. And Paper Rex win more angels than the other team, and that wins them a lot of rounds. And then they win the game, and it's like, oh, Paper X won, well done. Well, I bet they look good. Not really. No, they're like strategy and kind of their kind of macro game sense and all of that isn't that great, but they can click heads, and that's just the way it kind of is right now for Paper X. Jing will just push through a smoke randomly on his own, but he'll get 3 kills. Well done. That won the round. It should be a 5v4, but no, it's a 5v2 instead for Paper Rex. Like that happens often.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just have faith that Paper Rex
Okay.
will
So
just
I'm
be
gonna go a little bit different. I'm gonna say the team that rises up is Talon because
gone. Yeah.
I feel like they have finally, after 5 games, stopped trolling And we saw like regular comps, regular strats. We saw a little bit of like the lock-in talent in their last game.
Yeah.
So it's in there. It's hiding, but it's in there. And I can't let Zeta not make playoffs. I have to continue to believe that there will be a Japanese team at Masters Tokyo. So I'm going to say Zeta makes the playoffs, and it's going to be T1 that falls out of the top.
T1, interesting. Yeah. I mean, I've been pretty down on T1, but they got Detonation next, which should be a win. That gets them up to 4, and then they've got Team Secret, Zeta, and DRX. Now they could lose all of those games, and bad T1 are pretty bad.
Yeah, like, that's what I'm saying. Is I think they beat Detonation, or maybe Detonation gets their first win against T1.
No,
very. So maybe they lose to Secret, Zeta, and DRX.
They'll beat Detonation.
Okay, fair enough. But those are my two. So okay. T1 out, Talon in. As much as I hate to say it because of what Talon's done so far this year.
Okay, let's move on then to EMEA, which is an interesting one, I think, because EMEA, I feel like, is a top 6 and a bottom 4. Like, I think you can kind of... I would be very, very content with, like, you know, saying, no, the top 6 who are currently there, which is Fnatic, Navi, Liquid, Foot, Giants, and Vitality, are better teams than BBL, Karmine, Koi, and Heretics.
Yep.
And that's just how I feel. If you put a gun to my head and said, pick a team who's going to fall, I would probably say Foot. Because they have to play Fnatic and Navi still. So assuming that they lose those 2 games, they then play Karmine and BBL, which they should be the favorites for. Like, I you know, I'm not saying they wouldn't be. But maybe Karmine Corp continues to rise. Maybe just the absolute mega hopium comes about. And then maybe, you know, Turkish Derby last day, they get a bit nervous or whatever. Who knows? They lose. Possible. So they would be my most likely to fall. My most likely to rise is... you know what? I'm just going to say Karmine Corp. Because again, it's the same thing. Just root for what you want to happen. It doesn't matter what I say. Like, you might as well just pick the thing that you want to happen. Let's go, Karmine Corp. Their schedule the rest of the way. They play Foot, Winnable, Fnatic, and Giants. Yeah, they're not going. But just pick what you want.
Okay.
I mean, the real answer is BBL, but just pick what you want.
Fair enough. Yeah. So for me, I think I do have to go with BBL as the team on the rise. I mean, the interesting thing about BBL is that they actually have like a pretty good map differential. They're only -5 in rounds, actually, round differential. And to be fair, a lot of that could be because teams keep picking Ascent against them, and they're legitimately like one of the better Ascent teams in EMEA. So
in the
maybe
world, they beat DRX on Ascent.
Yeah. So maybe if teams stop picking Ascent into them,
actually,
or letting them have Ascent.
Heretics did ban Ascent, and they still won. Heretics Icebox. Oh my god. Oh my god. Like, if there was more eyes on that game, if more people cared about that game, oh my god. Oh my god.
Are they the next Karmine Corp?
Oh my god. It was... it was so bad. I mean, this game lasted for... I mean, Haven 1 hour 33, Lotus 1 hour 10, and then Icebox was a nice, cool 37 minutes. But there was tech pauses all the way through as well. This was the longest game of mid I have ever seen. This game killed me. It literally killed me. But yeah, BBL play Koi, Liquid, and Foot. I mean, they'll probably be favorites to beat Koi, so that's already you're up to 3.
Yep.
And then, you know, Liquid and Foot won't necessarily be easy, but I mean, could they maybe do it? Like, I could see Liquid letting them play Ascent, because Liquid like Ascent, and you know, that's one map they could win at least. So yeah, I honestly think possible for BBL. But
the team dropping out though might catch you a little bit by surprise.
Oh,
there's a team that their next 3 games are Navi, Fnatic, and Giants, which sounds to me like 3 potential losses. Oh, and that puts them in a very, very precarious position. They do finish up the season against Team Heretics, but if they lose 3 games in a row,
4-5. Yeah.
It's a little bit rough, and that team is Team Vitality.
Oof.
So I've seen a little bit of the downfall of Foot. Giants, honestly, even though they lost to Liquid, I thought they didn't look that bad. So I'm not going to pick
I
them.
think Giants will be fine. Yeah, they're chill. They play Heretic.
Vitality has had some very up games, some very down games, but their next 3 games are very tough. And their best map has been Split, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And all 3 teams that they're playing are good at Split.
Yeah, that's a bit rough. I actually, for some reason, I thought Vitality had already played Fnatic. I don't know why. I don't know why I envisioned that, but yeah, I actually thought they'd played Fnatic. Yeah, that's a rough schedule. Their game against Giants could absolutely be huge.
Mm-hmm.
Like that could, but I would favor Giants from what we've seen from both teams as well. So yeah, interesting, interesting. And now let's finish out then with the Americas, shall we?
This is such a clusterfuck.
This one, I mean, honestly, you can make an argument for a lot of different things. I mean, the team that's not in the top 6 that I think will be, I mean, there's only really one choice in my mind. So
Yeah.
currently the standings are Loud, Cloud9, Leviathan, 100 Thieves, Furia, NRG are in the top 6, and Sentinels, MIBR, EG, and Crew are in the bottom 4. To me, there's no way you can say that Sentinels out of those bottom 4 aren't the favorites to rise back in.
Yep. A couple weeks ago, you could have maybe sold me on MIBR,
Yeah.
but they are just so inconsistent. So it's got to be Sentinels from the bottom 4.
Yeah, but the team to drop out, now that is a good debate. Loud, obviously, no way. Cloud9 are already 4-1, so they probably only need to win 1 game, and they're pretty much guaranteed.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and they play MIBR and Crew in their final 4.
Cloud9 chilling, big chilling. Leviathan, I feel like surely Leviathan aren't that bad, and they also play EG and Crew in their next 2, so
they're fine. They're in playoffs.
They should be fine as well. And so then we get to 100 Thieves, Furia, and NRG, which I think is probably where the debate lies. And it kind of depends on how you feel about it. And actually, 100 Thieves play both NRG and Furia.
Yep.
So,
like, and Loud.
And Furia still play NRG. So, I mean, all of those 3 teams still play each other. They still have yet to play any of those others. That will honestly probably decide it. Like, those head-to-head games between those kind of group of 3 teams, that will probably be the decider of who goes down. Out of what I've seen so far, oh man, that's tough. I'm gonna believe in NRG, like you kind of mentioned before, that just a belief in what we've seen before from kind of that core of the team, that they'll be fine. Fury 100 Thieves. That is a tough choice.
Real tough.
I'm gonna say Fury is likely to drop out. The reason I say Fury are more likely to drop out, I mean, they play MIBR, though. That's going to be a 4th win. And then they just have to win 1 of NRG, 100 Thieves, or Sentinels. Maybe I'm reconsidering. What's 100 Thieves? 100 Thieves play NRG, Loud, Furia, MIBR. That is harder than... I mean, that 100 Thieves Furia game is just everything, though.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, realistically, it's between these 2 teams. It's Furia and 100 Thieves who are going to drop out of the top 6, one of the 2. And part of me wants to pick Furia because I feel like they're the most volatile of the teams in terms of, like, they're so emotional in how they play the game. Like, if they lose, to... Okay, and also, I feel like you have to maybe slightly factor in this, like, Brazilian versus Brazilian team thing where they've played each other so much. There is some part of me that believes that MIBR could win this game. And if they win this game against Furia, Furia's out straight up. But even if Furia does beat MIBR, I mean, the pressure of having to beat Energy, 100 Thieves, probably that Furia versus 100 Thieves game will literally determine who falls out.
Mm-hmm. And then Sentinels as well.
And then
that actually could, what's interesting about that is if Furia lose that game, it could work out so that Sentinels Furia is just a straight winning in and loser is out.
Yeah,
like
those last 2
fall that way.
Those last 2 games are going to be crazy.
But to me, Furia's main problem, like when I'm watching Furia, is that their map pool.
Mm-hmm.
Like they pick Ascent, but their Ascent attack is no good.
Mm-hmm.
Like
It's
they
only
can't win that
defense.
many rounds on their attack on
Yeah.
Ascent. Like and then they're always having to put like they're always having to win like 10-2 halves on defense to win a game.
Yep.
That's not a like if that's your map pick all the time, you can't be that bad at like everyone's always going to pick defense side Ascent on you.
Mm-hmm.
Your attack can't be that bad if you're picking Ascent because you are just going to lose. And then the fracture has never been convincing, and I'm not fully convinced by a lot of their other maps either. I mean, if I go through the map pool and think about what I've seen, they pretty much always ban Lotus. Their Icebox has been okay, and they've had some decent maps on it, but they've also looked like it's been a bit up and down. Their fracture is no good. Their split is, in my opinion, no good.
It's got to be Furia. It's got to be Furia.
Yeah, their Pearl is like meh. Their Haven is like meh, and their Ascent, as I say, which is normally their map pick, they don't have a good attack side on. It's like I think maybe we did just all take the Furia pill a bit too early. They beat Crew, fair enough, and then they beat Leviathan, and everyone was like, "Wow, here we go."
Yep.
But maybe that was just like you say, the South American teams just knowing each other very well and knowing what to do. And
Yeah.
Fury on the day won that game. Because then they got destroyed by Loud. They, beat EG, but I mean,
A little
they beat
shaky.
15-13 on Ascent.
Yeah.
This is what I mean. And they won a 2-1. Like, if they lose that map in overtime, they just lose 2-0 to EG, and we probably think this team is not there.
Yeah.
So
And then it wasn't very close against Cloud9. Yeah. So I think despite us needing to debate things, I think we both agree it's probably Furia that falls out.
yeah. But
Well-
then probably what will happen from this is Furia will beat 100 Thieves, and they'll just go through, and we'll just end up looking stupid because they won that one game.
Fair
Pretty
enough.
much.
I'm ready for the comments. This
Yeah.
steak aged
And we'll
like
get,
milk.
oh, you're so down on Brazil. Or 100 Thieves now will win, now that I've said this, and everyone will say, oh, how dare you doubt 100 Thieves. That's the way it is.
Well, on that note, I think that concludes our episode, TMV. Thanks again for joining me. Thanks for the takes. And we'll see you next time in the next episode.
Yes, thank you for all being here. Like and subscribe to the Acend channel for more of our two lovely faces. Goodbye.